The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was one of many new businesses that took advantage of improved technology to mass-produce a quality product at a good price. It specialized in shirtwaists, and women liked them so much that by 1909, New York City had more than 500 factories that made only these blouses. Sam Bernstein, the production manager at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, loved watching his workers use tools and production methods. Sewing machines, shirt makers, bob pins, and piles of cloth crowd this factory. Usually the factory almost ran itself, but if a problem occurred, the company's switchboard operator could reach Bernstein by telephone or of any 3 floors of the factory. The Triangle Factory was the largest in the country. The 2 men who owned the factory, Max Blank and Isaac Harris, were known in the garment industry as the Shirtwaist Kings. The owners worked well together, and Blank entertained buyers from stores to convince them to carry the products. Harris ran the factory and kept up with garment production, machinery maintenance, and workflow. The shirtwaist business made Blank and Harris very wealthy. They drove fancy cars and enjoyed comforts that their workers could only dream about. Both had worked hard in a competitive business and probably felt they earned their success.
Blank and Harris located their thriving shirtwaist business on the top 3 floors of the Ash Building in New York City. They chose the space partly because of the morning sunlight that streamed in through its large windows. It may have been ahead of the other buildings, but the Ash Building was not perfect. It had only 2 staircases, even though the city code required 3. The city had agreed to count the building's fire escape as the 3rd staircase, but the fire escape ended at the 2nd floor. Nor was the Ash Building well designed for evacuation during an emergency. Its staircases were narrow. Instead of opening outward to let people escape easily, the building's doors opened inward. Despite scares from several small fires in the building, Ash had not bothered to fix these problems. The Triangle Factory's workforce was made up of mainly young immigrant women, most of them Italians and Jews from Eastern Europe. Even if they had been aware of these safety problems, they would have hesitated to demand improvements for fear of being fired. Often their job provided their family's only income. Like most factory workers, Triangle employees could only afford housing in crowded slums. I lived in a 2-room tenement with my mother and 2 sisters, and the bedroom had no windows, recalled one employee. There was nothing to look forward to.
Most workers in the factory made $9 a week, and the youngest one just made $6. Of course, these were before deductions. Everyone was expected to work at least 59 hours a week. To make sure workers didn't steal anything, they were filed through a corridor one at a time so a watchman could inspect a woman's handbag. Working at the Triangle was unhealthy, uncomfortable, and unsafe. Managers never let workers leave the factory floor to use the toilet or drink from the dirty tap. Fire hazards abounded. Even though the city was prohibited smoking, the factory rarely enforced that rule. The Ashes building's only fire protection were a few hundred pails of water scattered through its 10 floors. The cause of the fire that swept through the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in 1911 was never known, but suddenly people on the 8th floor began to cry fire, and within minutes the entire floor was a mass of flames. Escaping workers rushed to the stairs or pushed their way to the 2 small elevators, but the stairs were soon ablaze and the elevators stopped running. Workers on the 9th floor had no warning, and the fire just appeared. Firemen found them as skeletons bending over sewing machines. In desperation, some rushed to the windows and began to jump. Firefighters arrived quickly but had trouble bringing their equipment close to the building because of the bodies on the pavement. The workers fell with such a force that one fireman said they went right through the life nets. At the public funeral for the Triangle victims, garment workers marched under a banner proclaiming, "We demand fire protection." As she marched, Rose Schneiderman glanced up at the buildings lining the funeral procession. There they were, girls right at the top of hundreds of buildings looking down on us. The structures were no different from the Ash buildings. Many were in a far worse condition.